This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
After 8 o'clock and into the third hour of our conversations this morning. And that's one. And you know what? A town hall with the governors, Council of Governors makes sense because you can do better in terms of how it is that you actually want to raise revenue and get the thing moving. Mm-hmm. So that we have these conversations is not because we lack something to do on a Friday morning. Is that because, you know, they're actually pertinent issues that need to be brought to the fore and that we can discuss them. And all of this is happening in light of the budget that was read yesterday by CS Treasury John Mbadi to say this is what's going to happen in the next 1 year, Kenyans, and this is how we are going to do it. We continue our conversation around that. We'll bring in the budget, of course, but we're looking at the week in review. And our youth perspective this week takes on that conversation from the courts to the Treasury to everything that happened in between. Moving this conversation with us this morning is lawyer and founder of the Roundtable magazine, Lenah. Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And James Mulamba is a governance activist. Also joins us this morning. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Du.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Thank you both for being here. It's likely to be an interesting conversation because we're saying we're not just going to lament, we're not just going to complain, but we're going to say, let's have reasonable engagement that takes us to the place whereby it is apparent that we are thinking towards activating those thoughts towards making something actually happen. All right, so as both of you know, we go around the African continent every week. Dennis will tell you where he is. We'd love to get your interpretation of today's proverb.
Today we're in Conakry, capital of?
There's a country. It is called Conakry.
Capital city.
The capital city
is Conakry.
Wow.
The country is? James?
I'm not sure.
For $1 million.
Miss me with that.
There you had the opportunity to be a millionaire like that.
I hope my history teacher was not watching. But
We are in Guinea.
They're always watching.
They're always watching. We're in Guinea. So Guinea is it's a rich country because they have bauxite, which is used to produce aluminium, which turns out to be important metal. You talk about vehicles today. You talk about your phones. But they're also rich in gold, diamond, and petrol, oil as well. But let's go to the proverb. The God says, what belongs to the sheep does not involve me until the butcher shows up. How would you interpret it? Ladies, go first.
Interesting. What belongs to the sheep does not involve me until
the butcher shows up.
I think this is that's a very interesting proverb. I think one of the things that I was taught in my Christian faith is that God has given me the will to be able to make decisions. He has given me the capacity. And with that, I need to be able to use that I need to put the same to better use. But now, most of the time is that despite us having the will and the capacity to be able to make decisions, we make decisions that are contrary to what we want. And then once probably things have gone gone sideways, we now begin to invoke the name of God. We now begin to call on the name of the Lord, not knowing that we are the one that actually invoked the presence of the butcher.
Well, James, you thought you'd escaped it.
Well, could you answer a proverb with another one?
Please.
Of course.
Yes.
I don't know if it's actually a proverb ama ni msemo wa Kiswahili. Wanasema mwenzako akinyolewa chako kitie maji.
I told you.
He said something like that in the morning.
Yes.
So, I think point is there's a lot of pain, enough to go around for everyone. My two-term guys thought they would not get some pinch of this. Tumewafikia sasa. You guys were celebrating that the economy is not working, that sisi watu opposition were complaining a lot, as if we wouldn't get to you in the end. We've gotten to you. This is a bad finance bill. It's a bad budget, and the country is not on the right pedestal. Whether you support William Ruto or not, whether you support his government or not, we are all going to suffer in the same breath and in the same length. You will not escape it.
The butcher is
all
common.
in the guillotine we are all in the gallows.
Wow. Well, according to you, the butcher is here. So let's start with you, and let's look at the balancing act that the budget is. We'll start with the most recent thing, James, which is the budget, before we then now go back and look at what happened in this week. The winners, we're looking at VAT exemption for large commercial aircraft and aircraft spare parts. So if you want to fly, you're fine. Dialyzers exempt from VAT to lower the cost of renal treatment. So folks who have to deal with that issue will probably pay less. A removal of excise duty on bottled water. So anybody who was drinking bottled water, you're okay.
Okay.
Duty-free importation of inputs for assembly of smart telecommunication devices. So that looks a little bit better. Duty-free importation of raw materials for manufacturers of motorcycle parts. Import declaration fee and railway developmental levy exemption for mobile phones. Now, the folks where it doesn't look too good. VAT on mitumba to be charged at importation. So when it's coming into the country, we say, here, deal with it.
Wait, what? They didn't scrap that.
You wanted them to scrap it? They didn't scrap
They said they did.
No, sorry, please. Yesterday it was read very clearly. That today will be surprised. I was in the high. VAT on mitumba to be charged at importation, no less. There's going to be a 25% excise duty on mobile phones charged at the point of activation. Now, activation, when you put on the phone and it says, hello, or when does that happen? 35 or 25% customs duty for importation of finished textile products. 20% withholding tax on winnings from lotteries and prize competition. Patapotea, itapotea. 35% customs duty on importation of select processed agricultural product goods. So we can see that there seems to be heavy reliance here on protectionist policies for the local farmer and or manufacturer.
Sure.
10% excise duty on imported and locally manufactured plastic articles. Save the environment, folks. So it looks as though the Cabinet Secretary and the good people at Treasury have tried to balance. They've also gone ahead to say that people who are not able to work, the elderly, will put aside 42 billion shillings for that, putting some money into education, putting some money into schools, putting some money into hiring of teachers. You seem to think that this is a bad budget, James. Why?
If we were to go by the resplendent speeches that we've been treated to by John Mbadi for the last 1 month, you would think we are on the right direction, but we are not. There is nothing rosy about a 4.8 trillion budget that has a deficit of 1.1. And from where I sit, I think the deficit is probably larger than 1.1 trillion. Last year's budget was supposed to be 3.9 trillion. We ended up spending 4.3 trillion. This year's budget is 4.8 trillion. It appears this government will spend 5.2 trillion by the time we're done with this year, if we go by the 90% of absorption of resources. So if you subtract 5.1 trillion from the amount we've raised so far from KRA, which is 2.7, probably 2.5, the highest. If I was generous and say I would raise 2.7, so if you subtract 5.2 from 2.7, what's the deficit? Is it 2.3? Is it 2 trillion? So we have a double the deficit they are willing to admit. So I would have expected a better budget from an expert who's been in the trenches with us. But it appears when you get into government, you sing the same language, you sing the same tone, and you quickly acclimatize to the language of the Politburo. And you forget the woos and the cries of the ordinary mwananchi. It matters when you're outside government, but it doesn't when you're in government. If there was a CS who would have actually put this government in check and vouched for people's budget, it was John Mbadi. Now that we've lost that opportunity and the ship has left the airspace, I don't know if you're going to get that opportunity anytime soon unless we have a Gen Z as a president. I would have expected Mbadi would have proposed a budget somewhere in the ranges of 4.2 or 4.1 trillion, not expanding it to 4.8 trillion remembering that this government has always overshot its expenditure by 400 to 600 billion every year. So we probably have made 3 steps back with this. It's an ambitious budget. And given a 4.8 trillion budget, you would expect that there would be an appreciation in allocation in almost every ministry, department, and sector. But the question should be, can we really live up to this target? Do we really have the resources to finance this budget? Are we really outsourcing our own problems to the domestic market and to the external market to try and plug in the current hole we have? And I do not see fiscal consolidation. I don't see debt restructuring. I do not see the conversation on what they call it, the fiscal austerity measures to try and reduce the expenditure on the side of government and probably reschedule or divert these funds to capital expenditure or to agriculture or to investment portfolio that would guarantee us a return on investment. As it is, I don't see anything rosy
Lenah,
about it.
Have we beaten more than we can chew?
You know, personally, I don't know, they call it pragmatist.
Pragmatist.
Yes, I'm very pragmatic. So I look at the practical reality of where we are as a country. And there are things that are, before making any budget, the government has to consider particular things. And these things are, number one, what are the needs of people? What are the needs of the common wananchi like you and me? What are the needs of a corporation? What are the needs of a corporation like Standard Media Group? What are the needs of an investor who would want to invest in Kenya? What are the needs of different stakeholders? That's what I mean. And then they will look at, where are we at? What resources do we have? What can we be able to get? And then based on that, the government will sit down and say that we have looked at the needs, and looking at the needs and what we have, these are the priorities. So this is what we're going to allocate our funds on. This is probably going to put much money in the education sector to be able to make sure that our populace is literate and skilled to be able to, to be able to contribute to the development of our country. We're going to put healthcare into this and this. We're going to put infrastructure and all that. That is what goes into the making of a budget. Now, when I look at our country, unfortunately, not just Kenya, but across Africa, our resources are constrained. We do not have big resources like the first world country. So we need to cut our losses in terms of our spending. Our current budget, our current revenue that we're looking to get from taxes and appropriation in aid, together with the grants and all that, amounts to 3.6 trillion. In that 3.6 trillion, our recurrent expenditure is 3.5 trillion. Now, you see, if to be honest, if we look at the difference is very minimal. It's almost like 100 billion or so, meaning that based on what we have right now, not with the debt and the borrowing, based on what we have right now, we only have 100 billion probably for our capital expenditure. I don't really blame this government only, in as much as there are things I have reservations with regards to how this government spends money, and not just this government, but previous governments. But I'm also looking at what are the steps that have been taken by the current government to be able to cure this, first in terms of debt, development, and also in terms of spending. Because most of our budget goes into recurrent expenditure. There's the vulnerability of wrongful spending money when it's not necessary, wastage and all those kind of things.
Call it budgeted corruption.
Budgeted corruption, yes, there's that vulnerability. But I'm also looking at, in terms of development, what has it been able to do? And I applaud it for one of the things that it has come up, which the president calls the infrastructural development financing, which falls now under the National Infrastructure Fund. Because we have noticed that we cannot be able to build our country based on debt and based on the resources that we have. So what do we do? Can we look for an alternative way of trying to develop our country?
When you say when you say Kenya cannot develop its country based on the resources that it has, what does that mean?
It's simple, that we don't have the resources to
Really?
develop our country. Enough resources. Look at what is our capital expenditure for this year. It's 800 billion. 800 billion is our capital expenditure. 800 billion for a country, and looking at the things that we want to do in terms of infrastructure, in terms of improving our energy, in terms of, even giving quality education to our children. This 800 billion is very minimal.
What has been done with the resources that are available to move that needle from this point to the next? Even with the little that is available, what has been done that you can actually see and say, yes, if we had more, then we would be able to do more? What has been done in the development? We're not talking about recurrent expenditure, because that's just it's in and out, right? The developmental aspects of the economy, even in the baby steps that has been achieved with the revenue that is available, that you can point and see, yes, now what we need here to firm up the reasoning behind needing more resources. Just two.
I believe that in the last 3 years that this government has come into being is that there has been an improvement in infrastructure.
Like?
In terms of our roads, in terms of our infrastructure, also in terms of our, what do I call them? The word is evading me, but there has really been a lot of infrastructure in terms of, number one, roads. Then there has also been infrastructure in terms of even digital infrastructure that has been built by the government to be able to support the creative economy.
Like what?
In terms of,
I really want to know, like, this digital infrastructure that we talk about, what is it? What is it that has been put in place to ensure that people who depend on the digital economy to survive then have been able to benefit as a result of inputs that government has made? I want to know what that is so that we can see it and then say, actually, yes, this makes sense. And if we had more resources to put there, then it would grow. What are those? Because road infrastructure is not a micro indicator of the economy. It isn't. And remember that we said that when we are trying to see how the economy is growing from a people-centered point of view, grand road infrastructure doesn't cut it. What is it that is putting money in the pockets of people? When we talk about debt and we talk about, what's that 700 billion shilling thing called that is owing people money? Pending bills.
Pending bills.
That we know that if you paid pending bills, what you do is that you inject money into the economy directly because people have money in their pocket, they're able to spend. So my question is simple because I don't know. I'm asking not from a facetious point of view. I don't know. What is it that has been done to develop a certain aspect where money has been put, and we have said that this has worked. Now, if we had more resources, we could develop it better. So road infrastructure here is mega. It doesn't count. What are those other areas?
I think sometimes we misunderstand when it comes to also the role of the government. And this is, I don't say that the government doesn't have its misses. It really has a lot of its misses. But one of the things that we need to also know is the fact that the government, one of the things that the government creates development is through these mega projects. Because, as I've told you, one of the things that the government will do before making any budget will be to look at what are the priorities. Not just the priorities of do alone as an ordinary person, but the priorities of corporations, the priorities of micro businesses like SMEs, the priorities of investors, all those kind of things. We cannot be able to cater for each and every one person alone.
True.
So what does the government do? The government will come up with a major project or will support a particular sector. Like now, for instance, when you talk about a sector like, let's say, for instance, a sector like education. Education has been given 784 billion. It is the biggest beneficiary of this budget. Now, this budget, almost half of this budget, which is 420-something billion, goes into TSC. TSC is mandated with the management, employment of teachers, staffing, and all those kind of things. Through that, what do? We get more people employed, more teachers employed to be able to work in schools. When we look at hospitals, most of our budget also goes into recurrent expenditure, not even the capital expenditure when it comes to hospitals or the healthcare sector. We need people to work in those kind of spaces. Through that working, you're able to put money into the pockets of Kenyans.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
See,
James wants to say something.
Okay, James.
I may still be a bit
Yes.
confused.
At this point, my ears are ringing. Well, I do not think that extending resources to pay salaries or for administrative costs for that particular reason will contribute meaningfully to the growth of this economy. And that should have been the priority with this budget. It should always be the priority. And if we are going to spend money on recurrent expenditure and administrative costs and dish a few billions on roads and the railway project that has been proposed, I don't think that will cut it for us. I don't think we'll feel the effect. I don't think it will put money into our pockets. I would have expected to see curated expenditure that is supposed to bring a return on investment on every coin that has been pegged on that particular ministry, department, or agency. I would have wanted to see government invest in the creative economy. I would have wanted them to invest in sports and in the young people. I'd have wanted them to offer affordable opportunities for SMEs to access credit, same as that for youths. And I would have wanted them to support manufacturing and industrialization more.
Okay.
I would have wanted them to factor in agriculture as the backbone of our economy, and I did not see that happen. So it appears we'll have another round-the-clock year, and we'll get back to June 2027 with the same situation we have here. We'll still have no money in our pockets, and we'll still be borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, or should I say borrowing from Ruto to pay Rigathi Gachagua.
You see, when you talk about the budget and the deficits that we see today, brother, let's not even talk about the deficit. Let's talk about budgeted corruption that we talk about, because under the current expenditure, in that there is corruption, because there's a time when the president stood and said, we lose 2 billion shillings every day. 2 billion shillings in a month, that is 60. In 1 year is 720. 720 billion is pretty much the same amount that is the largest allocation to education. When you do 720 in 4 years, where we are today is 2.88 trillion. Mm-hmm. These are funds that, if were to be used, if we sealed all the corruption and the wastage that we see today, perhaps we would feel the 2 trillion shillings in the economy today. Can we talk about a 4.8 trillion shillings budget with a deficit of 1.1 trillion, knowing very well that we are losing 720 billion to wastage and corruption? To you both.
I'm looking at page 2 of the Standard newspaper, and pictured here is John Mbadi standing in the middle, flanked by Kimani Kuria with his beautiful afro, and Samuel Atandi with his shining
No afro.
page 2 with his shining bald head. No offense to bald heads. And I would have wanted this to be a case of Jesus and the 2 thieves who were hanged with him at Golgotha. But it appears we have 3 thieves here and 3 dishonest people. Mbadi, who was accused people before of corruption and who's called people skunks before, to me appears to be the next skunk.
Why do you say that?
Mbadi told us that we should make no effort at trying to fix corruption. In fact, those that have stolen, please do not hide the money in offshore accounts. Please just bring it to Kenya. In a way, licensing corruption and feeding this monster that we've tried to strangle for a very long time. And if this is coming from a minister who sits at cabinet, how do you think that cabinet deliberates on its matters? What do you think number one thinks about the scourge of corruption? Probably he has licensed it too, and it's not a big thing if you're going to invest the money in Kenya. Do we have guarantee you're going to invest the loot you've stolen in Kenya? And shouldn't we be facing a different conversation? I would want us to have a conversation about EACC. Are they understaffed? Are they under-resourced? Do they have the requisite infrastructure? Why is it that they can't fight corruption? Are they too politicized, or are they weaponized? If we cannot have a conversation on the anti-corruption body that is supposed to strangle corruption, then we are taking 3 steps backwards. I don't think licensing corruption to tax it, it makes sense or cuts it for any country. But it appears that is the conversation they want us to have. I would have wanted Mbadi to speak into EACC and say, you guys are under-resourced. You guys get 30 billion. I'm going to give you 70 billion. Please try as much as possible to fight corruption in this country, because it is crowding out finances that would have been put into better use for development expenditure, for capital expenditure, and to spur investment and growth in this country. But we are not having that conversation because probably they've made love with corruption. They have romanticized it. They have romanticized graft to a point where it is normal now. And as long as you steal and invest here and nobody catches you, then we are fine. And before we have the conversation on EACC, we should know how much money the Asset Recovery Authority has recovered so far. The other day they recovered, was it 250 million shillings from Patrick Analo, the CEO?
65 reporting.
In Patrick Analo's account, it was supposed to be 250 million.
Okay.
I don't know how it went from 250 to 65 million. That's a difference of 190 something. Is it 185 million? Probably. But, well, let's say it was 65 million. They've recovered money from, say, corrupt guys before. So how much money have we raised through the Asset Recovery Authority? And where does that money go? And where do those assets go?
Yeah. Lenah.
Yes.
In the recurrent expenditure that there is, corruption lies in there. We've just established 720 billion shillings in one financial year just gets lost. And that is based off information that was given by a sitting president at the time. No one has objected that. So when we talk about recurrent expenditure and corruption is in there, how is that affecting the return on investment to taxes that Kenyans pay?
Corruption is really the biggest threat to the development of our country. And I actually agree with you that if not for corruption, our development would have really been spurred, almost like we would be 10 years ahead of where we are right now. And corruption is so bad, or it stinks to the extent that even if today an investor would want to invest in a country like Kenya, in a place that is riddled with corruption, it is very hard for them to be able to make that decision of investing. So it automatically chases them away because, number one, they're not guaranteed of a return of investment. They're not even guaranteed of fairness in the market and all those kind of things. But also when it comes to corruption, I blame 3 categories of people. And number one are the state officers, the people that have been mandated with the duty of carrying out different functions by the people. That includes now our leaders. Then secondly, I blame the institutions that are mandated with fighting corruption. And then thirdly, I blame the people. Actually, sometimes I always, when people talk about a system, what is this system? Because based on my research, I believe that a system is enforced by the people themselves. The same thing with corruption. Corruption is deep-rooted because of the people. I can tell you for a fact that if today we were to go and arrest a particular leader who has stolen money, and the government cracks down on that leader, a group of people from his home area will come short and say, no, you guys are targeting us as a community, all this kind of rhetoric.
But the government should not care about what the people say, but to give justice to the people of Kenya, because the government's role is not to respond to the feelings of individuals who are supporting and perpetrating an injustice.
I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. And I believe strongly that is the ideal world. And it's what we should have, because that's what the Constitution demands. But one of the things that I've always said about our Constitution is that our Constitution is more progressive than us as a people. Our Constitution is ahead of us. So in as much as that may be the thinking, that may not be the thinking of someone down there. And in a country whereby also political realities come into play, it becomes very hard for us to be able to achieve what you've just said. But anyway, let me finish my point. One of the things when it comes especially to the appropriation of the budget and trying the spending of this budget that we've just had, read by the Cabinet Secretary, CS John Mbadi, is there are safeguards that have been placed in our constitution to make sure that the money that is allocated goes into the respective purpose. But we also have lapses that I believe are more occasioned by institutions that are supposed to ensure or to enforce that which has been dictated by the Constitution. Like now, for instance, our Constitution dictates, when it comes to the chapter on public finance from around Article 201 and below, our Constitution dictates that for any money, there is no money that can be withdrawn and even distributed without an act of parliament, a legislation on appropriations. That is number one. It further says that there is no money that should be withdrawn without the approval of the controller of budget. That is okay. It goes and says that after the spending, the Auditor General has to come and audit and say and make sure that every money that was withdrawn has gone into the appropriate use. And then from there, if it hasn't, that is now where the institutions come in. And we have seen actually the various committees in the Senate and the National Assembly calling leaders to come and grill them on how that money has been used and how expenditure has been used. But beyond that, do we see any kind of steps that have been taken to ensure that, that once someone has been found guilty, that there's a step toward it, that there's a step beyond that? We don't. And that's where I have a problem when it comes to enforcement. Because the necessary institutions, if ESCC has been able to carry out investigations, where it has carried out investigations, then the next thing ought to go to prosecution. But do we always see prosecution? We don't always see prosecution. So that's why I say that corruption is the biggest threat to the development of our country. But each and every one of us has to be able to play a role.
So how's the
ending
government
corruption.
let down Kenyans because you talk about the ODPP, who is an appointee of the president. That means by virtue of pecking order, the buck stops with the president as an appointing authority of the ODPP. So when we say that we don't see prosecutions happen, should the president as well be called out for not going down on his appointee?
Absolutely. But you see, also, is the fact that as a president, I need, there is separation of powers. And every institution...
How about you go with separation of corruption? How about you guys can steal, but I can't?
Allow me to say that.
Okay.
Everyone has their role to play. And, sometimes we put everything on the president. And I understand, because at the end of the day, he's the head of the government. And he ought to be able to check, ensure that everyone carries their mandate as they are expected.
Okay.
But you see, ODPP also has his role. I believe strongly that everyone should be able to carry their problem. They need to be able to carry their cross.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's funny that you defend the president, because when ministries, departments, and parastatals are performing, he takes the praise. He takes the credit. He praises the health sector and the universal health coverage, and says the primary health care promoters, caregivers are doing an excellent job. He takes pride in the affordable housing program when it has been well executed and implemented by his juniors. But when there is enough blame to go around, he does not want to take any blame.
I think you guys misunderstood me. I didn't say that the president should be absolved of the blame. But I also believe that everyone should be able to carry the cross, because sometimes we lose out on the particular culprits because we are putting the blame on the government itself.
I hear you.
So okay.
You talk about, I just want to go back, because we can't run away from the budget indicators. And we cannot look at the budget indicators and run away from corruption. You've just said that corruption is the most crippling thing to development in the country. So that means there are enough resources, but that they're being taken, right? So Kenya does have enough resources to actually develop. So it's not a resource problem, or is it?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both, because we are a third world country. We are still growing.
Okay.
And as a third world country, we cannot really say that we have enough resources to be able to grow. And for me, I don't move with the emotions and the wave. I look at the data. When I look at the data, and this data hasn't just come from the Ministry of Treasury. This data has been as a result of sectoral groups coming together and giving out their input, giving out their data and all that. While there is the aspect of public policy and the data and all that, there's also the aspect of what is happening on the ground.
Right.
And the two of them, most of the time, they don't always match. And there's a problem. There's always a problem there. But when I look at most of what goes into our spending is the recurrent expenditure. I look at the capital expenditure that we have to be able to grow our country, and to be honest, it's not there. It's still very minimal for us to be able to develop our country to the extent that we want to develop our country.
Okay, so let's look at this in this conversation, and I think coming in from both of you, is that when you look at a budget, essentially what you're doing is that you're looking at the indicators with that, which will then allow you to spend in the next year, in the fiscal space, in that fiscal period. Now, the reports that you talk about, one of those is the economic survey, the report, the outlook, which, by the way, surprise, surprise, is done by the National Treasury. The Treasury puts together that output, that report. And that is supposed to then be the data and information, which you like, that forms how you will then indicate spending for the next year. But interestingly enough, what the economic survey that came out in about March or so then gave rise to does not match in the budget, because what it is supposed to do is that it should give you a forecast as to how you will then budget. That didn't happen in this budget from what we are seeing. The same people who came up with the report are the same people who came up with the budget. You would think that they were two different entities, but they're the same. So now my question takes us back a year from the 2025-2026 budget. How do we see that it performed vis-a-vis the situation on the ground, and what hope does that give you for the year 2026-2027? We'll start with you, James.
I don't know if you guys have money in your pockets, because I don't.
I don't have a pocket, right? Please carry on.
They said we should tighten our belts. I know some of us don't have one because we can't afford one. I have not seen any improvement from last year. In fact, if anything, we've gotten worse. And if going by the planning role that Treasury is supposed to have, and by now they have the indicators with them, they should have realized that the economy did not grow as they anticipated in the last 1 year. So they should have recollected and probably posed the question, how do we do this differently? How do we do it better? Because if you continue taxing a shrinking economy, you just strangle it. How then do you ensure the economy grows so that you tax from a point of, say, surplus? We have not achieved that in a long time. If you would ask me where the 2.4 to 2.5 billion shillings that have been earmarked for development expenditure in the last 3 years have gone to, I would not answer that question confidently, because we've annexed 800 plus billion every year for development expenditure. That was from 2022 to 2023. Let's assume they were warming their seats in the first year of government, so they didn't do anything meaningful, but they still budgeted for development expenditure. In the year 2023 to 2024, they still cut out another 800 plus billion for development expenditure. In the last year, there was another 800 billion for development expenditure. That brings it to 2.5. That is the amount of money we raise in a year. So if all the money KRA raises in a year was to be put into development expenditure, aren't we supposed to feel the effect? Aren't we supposed to see it? Ruto should not be telling us how the economy has improved and how his government is doing better. We should feel it. Kibaki did not waste his time with flowery speeches. He did the work, and we all saw the work. And we felt it in our pockets. We don't see that. We don't feel that. And it's getting worse by the moment. Given that we have a tight fiscal space, the government should be recollecting on how to do this differently. I've seen they've made an effort to fund capital projects, roads, transport, the MGR network, meter gauge railway that is. They are trying to securitize the road development levy so as to acquire funds for the SGR extension from Nairobi to Mulamba. They have also budgeted for the bus rapid transport system in Nairobi. And they have extended several contracts for roads in Central. Probably they are trying to net their votes. And they have earmarked 138 billion shillings for the housing department. But then this still begs the question. Do Kenyans need more houses or a better, probably, manufacturing industry? Do Kenyans need more houses in rural areas where they already have homes, or they need a revamping of the agricultural sector? Do Kenyans need more roads and more railway network? I'm not trying to water down this expenditure project, but I'm asking, do we need this as compared to our investment in the creative economy and in the digital space? The government is so quick to charge licensing fees to the young people who are in the digital space and to tax their meager earnings. But it is not robustly budgeted for the creative economy and the digital space in Kenya. If you would ask me today, have we budgeted enough for film production and arts in this country? I wouldn't think so. You saw the filmmakers the other day appealing to the president to at least look them with a kinder eye come this budgeting. But they had forgotten that we are almost reading the budget, so you would not factor that in. If we were to look at other sectors that I would have wanted a bigger budget for, include IPOA. IPOA has decried understaffing, under-resourcing, and they've said this has been part of the reason why they've not discharged their mandate as they are supposed to. And you look at the people of Narok were promised an airstrip. I don't think that was in the budget. The good people of Kilifi have been heaped on several promises when William Ruto was in the coast region at the ceremony for Fikirini Jacobs?
Yes.
And there's a string of other promises that never reflect on the budget. So how exactly is he supposed to do these projects if they are not budgeted for? Yeah. So looking at this, it's probably another perfunctory exercise just because we need to have a budget every year. Yeah. Ni ile tu hatuwezi ruka mambo ya budget. So that's just the point. Because the sectors that are supposed to receive that are supposed to feel these allocations are not getting these allocations. Yeah. So are we really cutting it for these sectors? Ama tunawazungusha tu ikuje tu mwaka ingine just because we need to have a budget. Na kwanza tukienda hapa mbele, we need to rethink the finance bill. As I said it here before, do we need an annual finance bill? Kila mwaka another finance bill. Because this finance bill has made the government lazy. They have not come up with better ways and more creative ways to raise revenue. So they bank on taxes for the bulk of our revenue. What if we said, wait a minute, we can't tax anymore? So this country is supposed to stop. Can't we get money from the minerals? Can't we get money from tourism? Can't we get money from the irrigation schemes?
It's interesting you say that the folks from the manufacturing sector were here earlier on, and it was clear that if Kenya had a manufacturing index, whereby it was clear on how it should actually bring in much needed funds from ensuring that you buffer the manufacturing sector, that this would be a no-brainer in terms of where do you get the money from for those spaces that have obviously the gaps that have been left. What are your thoughts around that, Lenah, in terms of what you can actually empower this economy if you put resources in the places whereby you can actually sell for profit?
Thank you, Ndu. And allow me to actually, I think my brother here, who is also my very good friend, is talking from a point of talking from a point of abstractness. And because you're telling us, the government, you cannot feel the impact, you cannot see where the money has. But if you come with the numbers and be able to convince me, then probably you'll be able to convince me. But when I look at one of the sectors that really grew in the year 2025, 2026, the financial year 2025 to 2026 was the manufacturing industry, actually, the industry sector. And it grew from 1.6% to 5%, meaning that there was improvement in the manufacturing sector as a result of probably the conditions that have been put by the government to enable the sector to grow.
5% of GDP.
The growth.
And it's compared. And when you want to look at growth, you're comparing it to GDP, right? I'm asking.
Come again?
When you talk about growth, when you look at how a country has grown from one place to the next, there are certain factors that come into place. So when you look at GDP, you're saying that growth, that if it was 1.3% the year before, it's gone to 5%. This is against when you're looking at a big number of GDP.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes. So it means that there was improvement in terms of infrastructure and also improvement in terms of the production cost, which attracted the investors to come and invest, and also the manufacturers within that particular sector to be able to put money into it. When we look at areas like agriculture, it also grew by 3.7%. When I look at things like when I look at also areas like what we call the current account deficit, there was a reduction when it comes to the last 5 years. In 2019, the current account deficit stood at 2% of the GDP. Sorry, it stood at 5% of the GDP. Right now, it's come down to 2% of the GDP, meaning that the imports that we do minus the exports that we do, the deficit has reduced. So when you come and tell me that the government has not done anything, I expect you to come out with the numbers.
How do Kenyans feel that effect? Yeah. I think that's the question. How do Kenyans feel that? Those three that you've given, yes. How do Kenyans feel it?
Let me help.
No, let me finish first.
Okay, yeah.
Let me finish. So, you see, our economy, most of the sectors whereby the investment, most of our budgetary allocation goes into, they're extractive sectors. And a sector like education, a sector like healthcare, a sector like housing, those sectors are extractive. They don't bring profit per se. When you invest in education, you're not expecting to bring profit from education.
So it's not an investment.
It's not an investment.
Exactly.
You're not getting profit from that investment that you're putting in, because education is not a place whereby we are trading. Education, you're putting money into education to be able to grow the skills of the people. So you cannot directly get benefit from it. So what happens? We now go into what we call the multiplier effect. The multiplier effect may not be. You don't feel the growth directly. You feel the growth indirectly. So at the end of it, based on education, if money has been invested into education, we're asking how many people have been employed. As a result, how many children have also been able to go to school? As a result of going to school, how many children have been able to get jobs? You see? That's what I mean. If you've invested in healthcare sector, you're asking ourselves, how many doctors have been able to get jobs? As a result, how many families have been fed as a result of those doctors getting jobs? As a result, how many people have been able to take their children to school as a result of those jobs from healthcare sector?
That doesn't show you from year to year. The indicators that we're talking about, these ones that you've given examples, do not appear from year to year. You will not be able to ask me to tell you how many children who went to primary 7 to 8 got jobs when we're talking about a comparison of 2024, which was my original question, of the 2025-2026 budget to the 2026-27 budget. This is the question that I'm asking, but we're running out of time. And the question that Kenyans are asking today is that the stopgap measures that you have taken over the last financial year, how has it improved the situation in their pockets? These are the things that you talk about, unfortunately, are long-term things and benefits that you will see for a child who is in grade 3 today. You will not see the benefit of the investment of education until they finish tertiary education, for example. So the question was, in this term, because the budget is year to year, how are we seeing the effect in the pockets of Kenyans? Maybe we can take that.
Incontrovertibly, the cost of living in Kenya has been on a rise. It is arguable that, as it is, we've not felt any relief. Mbadi had promised us a tax relief for those of us who might be earning 30,000 and below. I have not seen that. If it is in the budget or in the finance bill, please point it to me. So that is being tone deaf. So from where I sit, we've not felt an improvement in the economy. And as a budding economist, I'm departing from the numbers here because I've realized some of them don't even make sense. You don't tell us that the GDP has grown by 5% and we cannot see that. You don't tell us that inflation has come down. And for reality, we see that inflation has gone up. Because judging by, let's say you are a layman economist who does not really understand economics a lot, but you would understand that inflation is the value for money. As our value for money improved or depreciated, how many products or how much could 1,000 feel, say if you have a basket at Naivas, last year, but one as compared to this year? That is inflation 101. If the value of 1,000 shillings has depreciated, if your currency is losing value, or if it's not able to keep up with the cost of living, then that tells you that we are in an inflation and that it's rising. It's not coming down. If I was to fill a basket of goods with 1,000 shillings at Naivas 2 years ago, and I cannot do the same today, I have to choose between unga and rice, I have to choose between sugar and salt, then that tells you that inflation is going up. So if Treasury tells you that from their crunch of numbers, inflation is going down, would you as a layman acquiesce to such perfunctory statements? Because we've been treated to beautiful numbers and statistics that do not even make sense. And as a budding economist, I will repeat, the numbers from Treasury seem cooked. And I will say that with confidence. You cannot tell us that our GDP is growing, but we cannot see it. You cannot tell us that inflation is coming down and our cost of living is rising. So I just depart from using those figures, not because I don't have them, but because they appear fabricated. So I would want to stick to the reality I feel as a common citizen who is saying that the economy is not doing any better. We are not on the right trajectory. And perhaps we need to engage a reverse gear and get things right so that every citizen feels that this economy is working for all of us. The cost of fuel has gone up. The cost of almost every other good and product in Kenya has gone up, courtesy of the taxes we have. Say sometimes you could also blame global wars, but this government and Ruto himself told us that we should not blame external factors and forces for our own woes. I don't know why he finds it convenient now to blame it on the Ukraine-Russia war, Israel and Iran war. But anyway, if we were to go that route, point is the cost of living is still climbing, and we need to probably the government needs to come down from that sycamore tree. Zakayo needs to come down.
Your final words coming in a few seconds, actually, Lenah.
Well, I believe that we all have the responsibility of rebuilding our country. And it doesn't just lie with the government, but also it lies with us. Every decision that has been made by the government is a decision that I believe, from what we call representative democracy, is what the people have made. So if people are complaining that we are not seeing changes within the government, then come 2027, I believe we have the responsibility of electing better leaders than we do. Because the budget, essentially, the Ministry of Treasury comes with it, and then the Parliament comes and approves and says that, these amendments need to be put here and there. And the parliamentarians are the representatives of the people, and they carry out what we call, and as much as they may not be public participation by everyone, but they're the ones that represent the views of the citizens. Thank you.
Asante sana. Well, this is what it looks like. The sentiments are real as they come. Lenah Mbadi is a lawyer and founder of the Roundtable magazine. James Mulamba, government activist. Thank you for joining us this morning. It still will remain a conversation. We definitely will continue with those. Asante sana. Thank you very much. It's 9:03. Good morning.
No.
This is the Situation Room